And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thanks so much for joining us once again. I'm delighted to have on show someone I sat in the bus with for a few hours back and forward to the airport out in Eastern Europe, and that is Gary Rabine. Gary, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, thank you, Peter, for being on. I really appreciate it. It was a joy to meet you in the Balkans as we traveled around there a bit, and really a lot of fun to get to know you and your plight and talk about what I've been through over an amazing American dream, I would say.
No, absolutely. And we'll get into that. And likewise, you, there are some fantastic people at that event. You were, of course, one of them over there with your son. But there's being a businessman and looking into your background, having not come across you, even though you did a podcast with Charlie Kirk back in 2019, we'll finish on that side. But the business side, you're you've built a lot of companies. You've built very large companies, and I read that you were um, making driveways back as a kid, back as a teenager. Tell us a little bit about kind of your background and how on earth you got into the business you're in, and tell us about that business.
Yeah, so I always have fun talking about the story because you would have never thought from where I came from that I'd be blessed to be where I am today. And I believe it's God's blessings that have allowed me, and the American dream, right? It allowed me to have this small success. And I started actually working. My dad was a workaholic and loved his kids to work as hard as he can get them to work. And through grade school, he had us doing tree work. He had a tree business. He worked in a factory, and then also had a tree business. So he cut down trees and he sold firewood. And he had 6 kids. He adopted 3 kids, my older 3 sisters, and then had 3 more in a few years after me and my mom. He had 6 kids. Um, but he loved his kids, but he also liked to make sure that they understood work ethic. So he had us all working, and by the time we're 9, 10 years old, we're working long days, dragging brush and firewood and then splitting firewood and things like that, and really taught us work ethic. Some of us loved it, and a couple of us may not have loved it so much. But overall, we knew what it was like to work a hard day. And uh, so 10, 12 years old, I was operating little bobcats, and we call them skid steers. Some call them bobcats. And so this machine with a front end bucket on it, and I was doing grading of yards. Started doing some dirt work where he'd dump loads of dirt and I'd spread it and stuff. And then we used also to pull down trees, right? And so I got to be pretty handy on a skid steer.
And
By
all
the
this
time
was up in Illinois, up in the north.
this is in northern Illinois, almost in Wisconsin, right? The outskirts, suburbs of Chicago. And so I got pretty handy on that. One day, a man watched me run that piece of equipment. At about 13 years old, he offered me a job. When he said, "When you're not working for your dad, when you're working in the factory or is not working, I'll hire you to help me pave driveways." So that was about 13 years old. Um, and about 5 years later, at 18 years old, I didn't see myself going to college. So my vision was to go to work for my dad originally, who had a sole proprietorship. He was still doing tree work and hauling material, and he had left the factory at that point. He retired from the factory, and then so that was 1981, and so that's where I began really, finding I had a passion for construction and actually driveway paving. So within a couple of years, this small sole proprietorship that I worked with my dad for eventually became him and I as partners, and we started paving a lot of driveways. So in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, paved a lot of driveways, and by 1994, about 13 years later, I bought my dad's shares of that business out. At the time, it was about a $2 million business doing that. Back then, there was a lot of driveways you had to pay for. It was probably an average of a couple $1,000s a driveway. And so you had to do a lot of driveways to get to $2 million in revenues. We thought we're really something, and bought my dad's shares out, and over the next years, really focused on paying him off for his percentage of the business that I bought over a 10-year period, and then growing it. right? I knew that if I could grow it larger, it'd be easier to pay off the agreement we made to pay off his large check that I owed him, and it worked out pretty well because it really pushed me to aspire to be more than a couple $1,000,000 company. So let's say, 13 years later, he's all paid off, and we're now finding ourselves growing more businesses than just that one. So if 13 years later, I went back and looked at this as far as kind of time frames, and in 2007, we were about a $30 million business, and driveways were something we still did for a couple $1,000,000 a year, but then we also added parking lot paving and trucking, and now a national business at that point. We just started Rabine Paving America. So we then started calling ourselves the Rabine Group of companies, and we really became an incubator of entrepreneurship. So at that point, had started a few additional businesses and trying to figure out how to do that and how to really inspire a leader to help me build it. So at this point had probably 70 or 80 teammates in our business, and a few of those were partners in these businesses that we'd spun out. So at that point in my life, I was trying to figure out how to inspire people to want to be entrepreneurs. Then we'd have to really take and build a moonshot, right? So I read about John F. Kennedy's moonshot back then, how he said by the end of the decade, we're gonna land a man on the moon. And so I kind of use that as my basis of saying, what are we going to do in 10 years? What are we going to do by the end of the decade? If we start this business, who do we want to be? And so when we ask ourselves that question, especially as we continued on, we said, yeah, how can we be world class instead of just like everybody else? How can we differentiate? How can we do something special? Um, so we really got to be pretty good over the course of that time of understanding how to create the moonshot, how to create the operational structure to build that business to get to the moonshot, and then how to become world class. And so that was again 2007 when we started thinking about it that way, and then realizing we had this amazing market we were in the Midwest, that we could build businesses that were in the construction services and the facility services industries. So that was 2007. Nowadays, let's go all the way to now, 19 years later. We've added 35 to 40 startups since that time. So we've done is what somewhere around 44 startups within the Rabine group of companies. And so, I've become this crazy entrepreneur that loves doing this. Loves finding someone that's got talent, that has intelligence and work ethic, and then love really building a business around that person. And so, we have a lot of fun doing. We have 15 companies that we currently own, that I'm the chairman of and the majority owner of. I probably have a similar amount of companies that I help start, and probably a seed investor in most of those. And at the same time, right? It's the same recipe, right? So we continue to do it over and over again. And at the same time, Peter, I've been blessed to be able to run into some people that are really talented outside of my industry, outside of even business entrepreneurship. And as my late wife and I got involved in giving back. So, I was a half-ass Christian as a kid. I believed in God. I believed in God when I needed Him, and I'd pray when I thought I was in big trouble. Otherwise, I really wasn't much of a Christian, a Catholic Christian. I was baptized a Catholic Christian, but didn't really go to church much. My family wasn't passionate about that. But I met my late wife, and her family was super close, and the only thing I could figure out, this closeness came from their faith, and so I really like that. Within a few years of being married, 22 years old, and she was 21, started going to church more often, and by the time I had some big business troubles here or there, or personal troubles. By the time I was in my late, I would say early 30s, started to go to church a lot. Started to try to understand this Catholic faith that we were part of, and that faith today is a whole nother level. As she passed away of brain cancer about 6 years ago. And every time you have these big challenges, whether it's personal or business, you seem to go back to that faith a little stronger, pray a little more, show up in church more, and talk to your friends who are God loving people as well, who share faith with the blessings of this Christian faith. And so for me, right, we've been blessed to have challenges in life that push us closer to God, in my opinion. And we've been blessed to really meet some people. I would think that I would say that I probably wouldn't have been drawn as close to if I didn't have this love of God in my heart and my family's heart. I don't think I'd be as close to people because I don't think I would see that in others as fast and invest in others as fast that haven't. So so
Well, let
mm,
me. I want to
yeah.
come back to the faith because one thing that really stood out when you spoke at that conference we met at was you dropped in continuously about faith, about God, and often you hear Christians speak and their faith is so private that no one actually knows. Maybe God doesn't even know. So I really love them. But I want to come back to that. But on the business side, I mean, it's interesting because I think often people want something that's sexy, that's fun, that's going to make them a load of money in a quick length of time, and everyone's looking for a quick fix. And you actually having built something that isn't necessarily exciting looking, but actually is something that necessary. I mean, if anyone has a car, drives anywhere, you need to drive on something. But you obviously could do the work, as in make a pavement, a driveway, a sidewalk. But actually, the business side, you also had that, and it's intriguing having both. But I guess you didn't know you had the business side until you started to build. What was that like? Tell us a little bit about that and realizing you had those skills.
Yeah, so I think that in life you go through these different steps in life where you gained a little bit of wisdom and because things changed and benefit came from that wisdom, whatever that was. And I gotta tell you, there's a point in life, probably in my mid 30s, where I had a lot of people that worked in our businesses and I was able to start saying truthfully, that I love these people that are working every day helping us grow these businesses and serving our customers better than anybody else I think in the world at the time. So I started saying, to groups of teammates that I'd meet with that I love them, actually love them, right? And with God's grace, right? You end up loving people a lot more, maybe a little faster, I think, because you see the good in people, and when people are serving your customers with you every day, wearing your company name on their sleeve or their chest, right? How can you not love them? They're away for their family more than they are, more than anything else because they're working for your in your business, serving your customers, serving each other. And so as you get, I think as you get closer to God, you realize that boy, life is short, and if you can't love those people that are working alongside you, if you can't love your customers, those people those vendors that are serving you, boy, who are you going? Why wouldn't you, right? And so I feel like as I did more of that, I talked more about that as our business got larger and larger. I'd have HR people telling me, "Hey, you can't say that. You don't use God. Don't do." And I'd be like, "Wait, why? Right? Well, you can't do that." I said, "No, I can." And they said, "Well, here in the Midwest in Chicago, right? There's labor law there's laws that people could come after you for this or that and for saying things that inspired them in a way maybe they didn't." It didn't work out or whatever, right? Through your faith. And so I never, I never understood that. I understood that, okay, but I would never veer from that because I'm confident that as we talk about our faith, whatever it is, I believe my Christian Catholic faith. I know that for sure that people that love God are going to gravitate towards us, and people that don't love God, maybe they get closer to their faith, or maybe they just go find another job, another place to work. And that's okay too, right? We're not a fit for everybody.
Gary, I looked at your a little bit of your background. You meet people and you never know what lies behind. And I read that um, uh, Rabine. You need to put a Y on and instead, so it's R-A-Y, Rabine. But anyway, I'm not gonna do. No one can pronounce my name, so it's fine.
It's
But
more people pronounce it Rabine than Rabine, but Rabine is the correct pronunciation. But it's I go with either one because I'm called Rabine or more than I am Rabine, so that's okay.
the driveway guy will call that. Um, but Rabine Paving America, it says it ranks. I looking at it and I came across it ranks as the largest privately held asphalt and concrete parking lot paving operations in the US. That is fairly big. I think you mentioned faith and you mentioned talking to God, reaching out to God whenever you need to. And I think that's often people are like that at some point in their lives. But the other side, people probably look at you and think, here, you've got this like huge company making a ton of money, employ a lot of people, being successful. Um, do you actually ever need God? People think their success means they are, I guess, they become their own God. How, in the middle of that success, how do you still keep focused on what actually is important at the end of the day, which is your relationship with God?
I think it's pretty easy actually, because if you really believe that this success is not your own, it's we're part of we're part of this team, right? But God leads this team, in my opinion. The money we make, when we're successful, the money we make, it's God's money, not ours. I mean, if we invest it properly, to make sure our businesses are secure, pay our bills, right? Pay our teammates as much as we can, bonus our teammates, share in equity with our teammates. So we create wealth across the board with all of our leadership and a lot of our team. I believe the focus for us is investing our money to make a difference in the world, to make an impact, a positive impact in the world. And I really sincerely believe that if that's our goal, more people come along with that goal. We have more of our leaders like that vision, right? That you can inspire them if it's not all about you or them, if it's about serving. And what does God want us to do? God just wants us to serve the rest of the world in any way we can at the highest level we can, I think, right? And so when I think that way, think about as we have more wealth, and then we're very blessed to have been successful over these years. What do we do with our wealth, right? That to serve the world better. When we leave this, when I'm on my deathbed, and whether it's a day away or 30 years away, right? I want to know that we made a difference in this world, a positive difference that we believe God would want us to make, right? To serve Him is to serve the rest of the world, and to serve good people that believe in Him. So for me, we've been very blessed at this point in our lives to do things outside of business as well. So when as we say, okay, what can we do with our profits? We give a percentage of our profits to a foundation. The foundation is named after my late wife, Cheryl Rabine, and that foundation is basically giving back to children, elderly, and veterans across the markets we work in. And so we have a team of people, none paid, all on our board, that come from different parts of our companies. That they do a few things a year where they give their talent, their time and talent, and then we invest money in the causes that they pick. Whether it's myself, my family, the board, we pick different causes to be a part of. Then on top of that, myself, my wife today, Julie, and I pick things that we want to invest in, right? Invest in separately from the businesses that, again, hopefully will make the world a better place. So we've gravitated towards a lot of things that have fought for the American dream, to represent why the American dream is a great thing. My podcast is kind of about that. Started a podcast because I was mentoring young people on what entrepreneurship is about, how to be an entrepreneur, how to be a leader. And so my mentorship program that we built did very well. And eventually, my leader of that program, who I mentored, found it, had a great job offer, and I had. My late wife was battling cancer, so I went back to home to help take care of her, and then also Quentin, my partner in that podcast, or the mentorship program, I should say, had a great job offer. This is a kid that I mentored from just getting his high school diploma late, because he didn't finish high school, got his high school diploma, and then mentored him into being a leader. This young man's had a great job offer for a lot more money than I could pay him in a nonprofit. So we then started a podcast, Ditch Digger CEO. We said, hey, if we could just tell the stories of all our mentors, get them on, and more, right? People that had lived the American dream. If we could let them tell their story, their rags to riches, from nothing to top 1% in their industry, right? Top 1% in their industry meaning they're world class. And how do we tell their story? How do we get out? Well, we just interview them, right? And so Ditch Digger CEO, which we named because I was laughed at as a ditch digger when I wasn't going to college at 18 years old. My friends kind of, the movie Caddyshack had come out a year before. So it was a very common term that if you're not going to college, oh, you're going to be a ditch digger. So a couple of friends of mine got around a high school study hall table, said, so Rabine's going to be a ditch digger. Yeah, the world needs ditch diggers, Rabine, just like that movie, that statement. So anyway, bottom line, I remember that, right? I remember like it was yesterday. And so when I thought about a title to the podcast that would say "Rags to Riches," well, at that time I was a CEO many times over and a chairman of many companies, and I thought Ditch Digger CEO kind of explains rags to riches, right? And so it's a fun podcast, but bottom line is this: I want to spread the word. I want to spread the word that if you love God, you love family, and you love country, there's no better place to be than this great country, America. And to tell those stories over and over again, I think reiterates the blessings we have in this great country. And I fear that we lose these blessings if we're complacent, right? It's like anything in life, right? If you're complacent in your relationship with your wife, it's just not going to last very long. It's not going to last. If it lasts, it's going to be kind of miserable for her or for you or whatever. If you're complacent in any of your friendships and you don't nurture those friendships, they go away, right? It's kind of like taxes. I talk about this on the tax side too because I ran for governor of my state of Illinois back, 5 years ago, and I talked about this, but taxes are the same thing, right? If you're in a state that has competitive tax, average tax, or below average tax, right? It's kind of like a relationship. You're nurturing that relationship, it stays strong, right? People want to be there. People want to do business there. People want to build their homes there. When you're in a relationship that's taxing heavily, right, in a marriage, or your relationship that's being taxed heavily in a state or a country, boy, you know what? It just isn't fun to be there, right? And so I look at this thing that I think that God teaches us, right? If you serve others at the highest level you can serve them at, with whatever your talents are, I sincerely believe that things work out pretty well. And if you really strive to be world class, there's never been a better time in history, all history, to grasp technology, whether it's AI or robotics or 3D technology. In my business, we grasp everything you can imagine in technology to take our what are looked upon as dirty businesses, right? Roofing, paving, mechanical, doors and docks, right? Snow removal, and we gravitate towards the best technology in the world to make those businesses heck of a lot more sexy than they would be otherwise, right? And so that when I think about all this, it's about serving others at the highest level, at a world class level, and if I can think that way, I've got an amazing wife, Julie, and I've got 7 kids now. I've got four that I've had with my late wife, and I've got 3 that I have today. And you met one, Will, that I've got with Julie. And so with 7 kids, man, I want to serve them as best as possible with the limited time I have. I want to be a great father. I've got 7 grandkids, man. I want to be the best grandpa in the world. And with the limited time, right, you got to focus on those things. And so for me, being a servant and a leader is a blessing that we can be if we can. And if you're in America, no better place. I'm sorry, but if you're in China, the opportunity is just not there, right? You can't. You can think about entrepreneurship. You can think about building a business and serving your kids and with the inspiration of freedom every day, but it won't be there, right? So how blessed are we to be, living in countries that understand why freedom is important? And so
No,
my goal in life is to continue to spread that word through my business leadership opportunities, through every CEO I have. We have 15 of them now, and through also philanthropic things that I'm involved in. And about 13 years ago, a little more than 13 years ago now, I guess it's been probably 14 years now. I met Charlie Kirk, and Charlie was a young man, 19 years old,
th
and
how do you I love the way you drop that in. I mean, that what you right at the beginning of his time, how did you end up, meeting Charlie? And probably what did you feel you could bring to it? Obviously, you could bring money, that's one thing, but you'd, as a businessman, learned so much from the highs and lows and of course, your faith. So, how did you meet him, and then what did you feel you could bring to him to help him grow?
so I think that, again, I'll go back to, loving God, right, is loving people. And if you love God, you see things in people that I think you don't see otherwise. I think that at 25 years old, man, I really wanted to build a business, but I didn't see any more value in somebody that loved God or somebody that didn't, right? But what I saw in Charlie, and I've seen in many leaders that I have to run our businesses, is a passion for something, a passion, in my industry for my industry, right, and the businesses we work with, and the customers we serve, right. I see people that love those things, and we nurture that with bringing them into management, and then eventually a president level or a general manager level, someday a CEO level, and they then lead a business to be something special as we inspire them to continually serve at the highest level. All right. In Charlie, in others also, but boy, Charlie more than anybody else, didn't take long to understand that this kid loved God, like, first and foremost at 19 years old. It didn't take long to understand, boy, he really understood the value of family at 19 years old, and having a family at a young age, and building a family, right? He understood the value of that. He understood the value of not kind of going along with the crowd, right? To challenge things that he knew in his heart weren't right, because of his godly heart. He could figure out when things weren't right. If somebody talked about abortion, or somebody talked about whatever, this kid got it at an early age that, hey, no, I'm going to fight against that because I know it's not right. When other people would just say, oh, it's not really a fight you should take, it's not an argument you should have. Charlie stood strong in a way at 19 years old that I never imagined. His intelligence was that of, within the first 2 hour conversation we had. I'll tell you a quick story, but bottom line is, we had at this point in my life, we were supporting um, politicians, local and national politicians, but mostly local politicians we were supporting, to run and win races if we knew they could not be bought. If we knew they were, they loved America, and they were fairly conservative or really conservative, or, we would say, if they can't be bought, if we know they can't be bought, and they're going to serve the community like we would like them to, we're gonna help them. By that point in 2011, 12, 13, I found myself chairing some political races for a state's attorney and for a sheriff. And the state's attorney, I got involved because during some union fights, I realized the state's attorney was definitely bought by the unions, and Republican state's attorney, totally bought by the unions of the Chicagoland area. And so I helped a state's attorney that never had been a state's attorney, never had been in politics, run and win. And he was spectacular. He's an amazing guy, and fought every crooked cause that the other person had already surrounded himself with in that county that I lived in. Soon after, he asked me, within a year or so after, he asked me to support a sheriff's campaign against the sheriff that we believed also was definitely not, definitely could be bought. And so I got behind this sheriff and became his chairman for his campaign. He won barely, I mean, by just a little bit, because the sheriff he beat was pretty popular, and he was not known in that marketplace even. But I tell you what, I had the blessings to get to know Newt Gingrich a little bit, and then invited Newt Gingrich to come and speak at an event at a golf club I bought right before this point, and still own today, called Bull Valley Golf Club. And at that golf club, Newt Gingrich and his wife came to speak. for no cost. I told him I'd pay for a car and pay for a hotel, and he said, "Oh, that's good enough," because he believed in the cause. He believed in our fight, and so he came there and spoke. We raised about $350,000 that night, and that was enough for him to win that campaign. But the most important thing that happened, now that sheriff went on to be a great sheriff, and the sheriff that replaced him after 8 years in place today is amazing sheriff as well. That really, this guy changed the culture of the political sheriff in McHenry County, and the team that's there now is amazing, just like he was. So it's really the sheriff is an amazing guy that's there today. So okay, so but the coolest thing that happened was on that night that Newt Gingrich came, this young man at 19 years old came to listen to Newt Gingrich and whatever.
I thought the coolest thing was you raised 350,000, but anyway, on to Charlie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what happened though was that was barely enough to win the race because we only won by like I think 50 votes or something like that. But okay, but Charlie Kirk, this kid comes up to me and says, "Hey, Mr. Rabine, I'm Charlie. I started this new organization. I really want you to look at it. I've heard that you support good causes for free enterprise and youth, and I've started this organization. And I'd love you. Can we sit down and talk about it?" And I said, and Charlie, Bill Montgomery was next at his side. Bill Montgomery is an amazing guy that was his visionary, in my opinion. His first mentor and visionary was Bill Montgomery. And so he had a couple other friends with him, Mike Miller, who's still around the organization today, and one of his first donors, and a couple other people were there with them. But they were there to listen to Newt Gingrich, and I said, "Charlie, I can't meet right now because Newt just got here, and it was about 8 o'clock." I said, "I can't meet right now, but I'll tell you what. When he leaves, he's only be here like an hour. Him and his wife are going to be here for an hour. We're getting him speaking, and they're going to leave. And so let's talk right after that." He goes, "Oh, that'd be great, Mr. Rabine. Thank you." Well, Newt Gingrich, as you might know, is an amazing guy, and if he's around a crowd he likes a lot, he's not gonna shortchange you. He was there for about four hours. Him and Khalees were there about 4 hours that night, and so I find myself I'm running all over the place. I introduce Newt. I speak a little bit, and after Newt, and then running around this whole room, right, trying to make sure I'm helping raise money. And Newt finally leaves over after midnight, and I look around, everybody's leaving, and everything looks good. I'm gonna get out of there, go home. I got a 20-minute drive home, and I got to get up the next morning. And Charlie comes up to me and says, "Mr. Rabine, we got time now? You got time to meet now?" And I go, "Oh yeah, I can't wait." And I'm like, "Yeah, I promise you, yeah, let's." And I talked to my late wife, Cheryl. I said, "Cheryl, you okay with this?" Because she was there with me, and she with one car. And she goes, "Yeah, that's fine. We can do that." So sure enough, we sat down with Charlie and Bill Montgomery for a couple hours into the wee hours of the morning there in front of our fireplace. I'll never forget the time we spent with him because we weren't tired at all. We weren't tired anymore. We heard this kid's vision and we heard how clear it was. When we asked him about faith that he loved so much, he had answers that we could not imagine an 19-year-old kid ever having, right? Describing different parts of the Bible, why one thing meant something compared to what others thought, like we may have even thought. Um, and then history, right? I'm a paving guy, a concrete guy, so I think I'm pretty smart when it comes to concrete pavements and the history of and the invention of concrete in the Roman days, and the lost recipe for concrete in the 4th century, and then the discovery of concrete back in your back door in Portland, England, right, is where concrete was rediscovered, the recipe for concrete. And shortly after that, it was rediscovered in Rome, and as they uncovered the engineering vaults, 5, 6 floors below the ground, in uncovering the fall of Rome, right? The uncovering of these vaults, and so yeah, that was only like a few years after you guys reinvented it in Portland, England, right? Okay, so that story I knew fairly well. I knew the years. Back then I was telling that story to engineers and people, customers, everything else. It was a very interesting story about concrete and the amazing strength of concrete from that time that's still there today in the aqueducts and the baths and everything else, right? Okay, so I thought I knew pretty much about that. Well, Charlie recited that story better than I just did or ever could. Okay, And I'm like, "Wait a minute, how do you know this too? This is crazy, right? You're not you're not even inspired to be an engineer. You know." And he goes, "No, I just study history a lot, Mr. Rabine. That's I love studying history and I love studying the Bible, and I've done this my whole life. Like your whole life, Charlie. You're 19 years old." Yeah, I know. Well, Bill Montgomery got in the middle of any bragging because Charlie won't brag. So Bill Montgomery got in the middle of that conversation. Said, You know, Gary, you don't understand. Charlie's a photographic memory, and Charlie would never tell you this until the day he got assassinated. Never would say, "I got a photographic memory. I'm the smartest guy in the room," but he had a photographic memory. And Bill said, "Gary, you can ask him about anything in the over the last 2,000 years, any wars that have happened, any political." The political culture of any country in the world in the last 2,000 years, the predominant faith or religion in any country in the world. You ask him anything, right? And he's going to answer with sincerity, and he's going to know almost anything you could ask him. And so, sure enough, we played that game for an hour or so, and at the end of that couple hours we were with him, we knew we were meeting with somebody that God had brought to us because we'd been praying about this craziness we saw in our schools where our kids who we couldn't afford to go to college, yet we wanted to send our kids to college someday, and we were blessed that we could afford to do that. And so three of our kids had been in two of our kids had been in college and graduated, one in law school at the time. And we're like, man, we were so concerned with the direction of our education system because we saw this left wing agenda, right? To turn their minds from God is great and family is great and country is great to God, what do you need God for? Family, come on, family, nuclear family, that's just crazy, right? What you don't have to be a male or a female just because you're born that way, and all these crazy things that we're hearing, right? And watching our kids, getting through it fine, but definitely, seeing some of their friends being shifted from a family oriented kid that loved God to the opposite, just because that brain twisting that happened in college. So anyway, we were concerned with it, and when we met Charlie, we're like, man, this is the answer. If we can help this kid do what he wants to do, and at the time, Peter, he'd raised about $15,000 over about 8-month period of time. He had 50 or 100 kids that were interested in Turning Point. We committed to writing him a check that was similar to what he'd made at that point. And then we more importantly than that, we committed to getting him in front of every person we knew and every family we knew that lived the American dream in any way. Okay, so I got many friends that build small businesses, and boy, they've lived the American dream. They're worth a couple $1,000,000 or maybe a little more. And we met people through business that were worth billions that had lived the American dream, and we knew that if we got this kid in front of them, man, he would be able to sell them just naturally, just as he sold us by being who he is, right? And so sure enough, that worked out pretty well. Over the coming months, got him in front of some of the most amazing, people that we focus on. If they just built the American dream, that's good enough. They didn't have to be God loving, but many of them were. And we realized after a while, just like you kind of figure out the market that works, man, if they love God and they had some success or their family had success, they're going to be in pretty fast with Charlie. And if they built business and they understand what's going on our college campuses, they had kids in college, even high school, they knew that this was a fight worth fighting. And so within about 4 or 5 months, we were able to help him raise about $1.5 million. And then and we started his board. So I was used to starting boards for my own businesses, right? Where we'd start a little board of advisors, whether it be myself and friends and people that were strong in the industry we're serving. So we knew the answer. Once we raised enough money, now we're gonna build a board. And this was before we had more than a couple 100,000. We're gonna build a board. Then we're gonna have a moonshot of where we want to go. And Charlie was thinking about that every day. Where does he want to go? We're gonna build a world class organization, and we're going to get people on this board that are entrepreneurial, that will hold Charlie or anybody accountable. And we within a year, we had our first meeting, and I'll never forget it. It was in Florida at the time because we had an event down there, and we just a few of us in the room with Charlie and a couple other, Tyler, who's still on board today, Bill Montgomery, his original mentor, and a few of us as entrepreneurs. And I'll never forget that the whiteboard, right? We had a whiteboard up there, dry erase board, and we're scribbling all these things. And what's the goal? What's the moonshot? And Charlie said, I've been thinking about this, and I think it's 40,000 kids and turning point in 10 years, and a budget of $50,000 a year, or $50 million a year, that we have to have a goal of making to support those 40,000 kids. And as you may know, 10 years later was only a couple of years ago. We celebrated, 10 years, and it was, well over, our goal. We elevated the goal a little more than what Charlie said, right? But overall, he exceeded the goal by about 400%, and it was a big goal. The goal, if anybody looked at that goal, they say, "Are you crazy? How many organizations raise more than $40 million a year?" Right? Well, we were 100 million a year at that point, and we had about 400,000 kids in college campus across America, right? So again, this is a story of really of a kid that really was a natural entrepreneur. He's always was thinking, way out. He was always thinking about, what did he want out of his life? What's the impact he wanted to make on the world? This kid knew it at 19. He knew that he wanted to change the world. And he wanted to change the way kids thought about God, family, and country, right? And he knew that if he got in front of college campuses where he used his incredible memory, he has his photographic memory and this passion, right? He knew that he would change the minds of many, and boy, did he! And so that's where we're at, and not, now we've got to really understand what we're doing in the future, and we're working on how do we continue to make sure our organization, Turning Point USA, really lives in the culture and the light of Charlie, not anybody else. And with AI today, I think we can do that better than ever before. So we're going to use technology. I'm convinced to do a great job with that. But it's a lot of fun, right? When you can as an entrepreneur, and I challenge all entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur, you can build business. You understand the structure of building a business from start to big to large or world class, right? Man, and use that mind. If you love God, right? You love your country. You love your family. If you love those three things, then use that mind outside of business too, to help other people build things to change the world. And I can tell you, I'm blessed to be part of an organization with General Flynn that's changing the world. I was blessed to be part of an organization, still am, with Bernie Marcus, the Job Creators Network, that's changing the direction of our country, in all good, in my opinion, challenging the status quo with many things. But again, if you're an entrepreneur and you really love building things as an entrepreneur, boy, the same principles apply, right? Figure out the vision, figure out who's the best in the world at whatever you're doing, to compete well with them, right? And then build the team that has unending work ethic, passion for God. I recommend, right? God, family, and country. Whether you're in England, you're in America, you're in Montenegro, right? Wherever you're at, and if you love your country, fight for it. If you love your sovereignty, fight for it. If you love your country and you love your God, fight for them. I think it's the most important thing we can do in our lives, as we understand we're here to serve Him more than anybody else. And if we do that well, it's not gonna be all easy, right? He's gonna want you to have some tough days. He's gonna want you to grow some grit, right? Grow some toughness, in my opinion. But in the long run, it works out pretty well, right? You're not going to be perfect. You're going to lose, people in your life that you love. You're going to see people in your life struggle. You're going to see your country that struggles even, right? But entrepreneurship is something, I think, that can solve many problems. It does every day. But if you it what I have a hard time with, Peter, is seeing my friends and seeing people that I know very well that have these principles, but they stay quiet. They stay quiet because they don't want to challenge the status quo. They don't want to be called out. They don't want lawfare, right? They don't want to be sued. They don't want to lose customers, right? Nobody wants to lose customers. So they're quiet, and they stay quiet instead of using their intelligence to make a difference, to stand up for what they know is right. And so like I said, I wish that we had less friction when it came to sticking your head up out of out of the hole of convenience or ease, right? But I'm confident that if we did, the world would be a better place. And I look at nowadays the lawfare that happens when you run for governor of your state. If you're a strong conservative and you run in a left state like Illinois, there's some pain there, and there was for me, right? There's definitely a lot of costs I had and lawfare and crazy things that happened, a little bit during that run and then afterwards, all the way up until now, that have cost me a lot of time and money. I'm confident that that's kind of the grit that God gives you. That hey, you want to get in the game. It's not going to be easy. You're gonna need to fight, and I think that's overall it's a good thing, especially when you can win some of these fights that people think you can't. So, Peter, if I can give you another example of when you actually stand up against something and something you don't think you can even have a chance of winning, and you do, right? It gives you confidence that you didn't have before, and so that happened when I was on the board of Job Creators Network (JCN), and we had a call, a monthly call, talking about Joe Biden's vaccine mandate that was going to go into the private sector, to where he was now going to force every private sector business leader to an organization to vaccine every employee. Well, I was bothered by that because I knew that I wasn't like a big fan of it. I didn't know enough about it at the time to say it was good or bad, but just wasn't a big fan of forcing people to do anything that they might not want to do. And so I said, I'm never going to do this. I'll never, force vaccination. And then Alex Acosta at the time was on this board, and he was the labor secretary before. And Alex said, well, you're going to lose your business eventually if by the law that he's putting out there, and it wasn't done yet. He goes, I believe that he's going to build it, so you'll lose your business eventually with the amount of fines you're going to have from the federal government. And he explained why and all that. And I said, well, we got to fight it then. We got to go after this. And well, it wasn't out yet. They kind of knew where it was going, within a few weeks later, it came out in October of 2021 that new law came out, and January 1st was going to go into effect. And many businesses in November, December that year were just initiating the law already, just forcing vaccination. And so we filed a lawsuit within an hour of it coming out, against Joe Biden and the federal government. And while I was running for governor at the time, right, people said, "Oh, this is a political thing," and most political people said, if you were in Florida or Texas, this would be good, but in Illinois, it's not a good idea. And I said, it's not about the political thing. This is more important to me than winning the governor's race because, Illinois, the governor's race for me as a conservative to win were very low odds. I had very high odds of winning the primary if I could get Trump's endorsement. But I didn't end up getting that, which was another blessing from God that I didn't get it. But overall, when we filed that lawsuit, we heard from a lot of people fast, right? But eventually, we won in a lower court, and then they appealed it to an appellate court where we lost. We appealed it to the Supreme Court, where it was heard in January of 2022. We won that January 14th of 2022. We won that lawsuit against the federal government and Joe Biden, in the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. Right. So that was a big deal. I raised my hand and said, I want to sue him. And Bernie Marcus at the time said, he goes, are you going to pay for it, Rabine? Because we don't have it in the budget. And I said, Bernie, I'll pay for it, but I'm gonna, as long as you allow me to find more CEOs to help me. And so I did. I found like 5 other CEOs to join me in that lawsuit, and we won in the beginning of January of 2022. And it was kind of quiet about it. And Republicans in Illinois didn't really care. I mean, they thought I was crazy. I was stupid to go after that. In other parts of the country, they thought, oh, that was a big win. But in liberal states like Illinois, it's like the same thing. Hey, keep your head down. Why are you doing this? You can't win the race if you're gonna go after this. And not in Illinois, not in New York, and because we have people that are conservative that aren't so conservative. That they're conservative, but they don't really live by conservative principles, they don't appreciate when you stand for something in a big way like that. Maybe right. So it's just some stuff I'll never understand, but that's okay. It was a big deal because 80 million working Americans did not take that jab from that point on. in the private sector. So again, I think you stand up for what you believe in, and sometimes it's going to cost you. And that cost me some money, and then some of the lawfare that I've experienced since then has been because of that for sure. And so, but it's in the long run, God's blessed me with business growth, and got went back to business right away after losing that primary, and met my wife. This is about 4 years ago now. Met my wife within a couple months of that losing that election, and our businesses are doing amazing. We've started a few more businesses, and one business that you were around actually is Rabine Global. So when Charlie was alive, that smart kid and I talked about the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative and how, boy, it'd be nice if there's a way to slow that down, right? And there's some things that have gone on, and that people competing against them here and there. But I wanted to build a business eventually. A couple of years ago, I said building a business that's going to compete with the Chinese Belt and Road. The technology gains we've got in infrastructure and pavements and concrete and AI and robotics we have today can compete with anybody in the country to deliver amazing products, long life concrete like nobody in the world has seen since Rome, right? Technology and AI and robotics that really does an amazing job pre-construction, during construction, and long-term maintenance that nobody else in the world is doing. Our company called Site Technologies that we have today. It's Site Infrastructure AI. Site is Facilities AI, where we fly drones over properties anywhere in the world, a building and infrastructure anywhere in the world, break down the existing conditions, and then we basically visualize for them what the future could be depending on what their budget is, right? And so that business is an awesome business, and it's so much fun because it's leading the industry in the world right now. And so what can we bring these competitors against our competitor China, right? What can we bring, the Balkans and Africa and these countries? A lot longer life roads, way better warranty and long-term maintenance, all for a cost a little bit more initially, but a value that's 5 to 10 times more in the long run. And we're not looking to take over their natural resources. We're not looking to take over their farms and all the other things that the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is about. And so Peter, as I was with you, right, we're meeting with, we happen to be meeting with different people, ambassadors and people from countries in the Balkans, presidents and prime ministers. And boy, we've got some good traction there. We've got about $2.5 billion of letters of intent on a couple of nice jobs, and then we've got about $4 or $5 billion of the work that's kind of on hold to China. Now tomorrow we're meeting in D.C. with a bunch of leaders again on the finance side because we have to figure out how to help them finance this, right? And if we don't do it, if we don't get the financing, we'll be fine. Rabine Group would be fine, and we'll still go after work in other parts of the country or parts of the world. But if we don't get it, China will do that work. China will do this multi-billion dollars of the work, and it's not cheap. It sounds cheap, like a good drug dealer, right? Initially, it sounds pretty cheap because the interest is low and costs are competitive, but the long-term value is really bad. Not only their infrastructure not last as long as it should, but they also the goal for them is to take over these countries, right? Take over their infrastructure, take over their natural resources, right? Their critical minerals, and that's not our goal. Our goal is to do great business with them, to bring America first principles to them, and make their country stronger. Keep them to allow them to continue to be sovereign countries and never owned by anybody, right? That's a small that's a big dream for a small guy, right? And a small group of businesses and a small group of minds, but we're actually having amazing traction. When I ever do this in a position, I'm 63 years old, right? So does a 63-year-old guy need to do this? Risk more business? It could put me out of business totally. It could knock all my companies out of business if I do this badly, poorly. And China won't be very happy with me when we're successful. But bottom line is, I sincerely believe that it's God's plan, it's not our plan, and if this is something that God would feel we served Him well with, then we'll end up being successful probably. If God, you don't need this, Rabine, then I'll probably probably won't get any work there, or maybe I'll get some work there and it won't work out so well, right? But that's entrepreneurship, and that's the American dream, in my opinion. right?
Well, that's guys, a perfect place. I never thought I would find someone who loves concrete so much as interesting as you. But hey, but it's fascinating to hear about how you've built Rabine Group across the world. Fascinating to hear about your connections with Charlie, your faith and what that means for holding on to God. And of course, people can go to ditchdiggerceo.com and look at some of those interviews you've had with some fascinating people, and having a conversation that different conversation that we could have because you connect with people on a level of building something. But Gary, I really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for giving us those insights to our audience.
Hey, thank you, Peter. And number 13 is my favorite number is 13. I don't number these podcasts, right? I went back to listen to Charlie's podcast after his assassination, and it was 13. And so it got there's many great podcasts there, but that's the best because love that kid so much. But anyway, hey,
Number
thank you so much.
13.
Thank you so much for being on, allowing me to be on your show. And thanks for all you do, Peter. You're a guy that I admire very much. Everything you're doing is about, you know, not being molded to your political surroundings around you by standing strong and the principles you believe are important. And what we need more of you. Okay, so thank you for all you do.